Okay, here we have a typical configuration for a retractable. So this is a 1-inch retractable, mainly called that because it's going through a 1-inch full port valve. So we always look for a 1-inch full port valve. Starting at the pipe side, you'll have normally a nipple. This could be welded or threaded as this one is. It might be a flange with a nipple. Then you've got the 1-inch valve. We can go to larger valves and we'll size it down this side. But a 1-inch full port valve is required. When the device is installed, that is permanently open. So that needs to be retracted first. The device needs to be retracted back through this assembly. The valve closed, then bled off. So next up on here, we have a 1-inch nipple with an integrated bleed here. So once this valve is closed off, we can then bleed off just the small amount of process or that's in this section here before we then disconnect, so that you don't get that weeping out when we disconnect from the MPTs. Next portion of the assembly is called the stuffing box. So the stuffing box, in here you're going to have a set of packing seals that clamp around the device and the ID of the stuffing box, and that's your process seal from the pressure when this is installed. And then above that you'll have some sort of locking mechanism. This one here is a simple compression fitting that clamps around the device, holds that in place. And once that's all installed, then there's normally a secondary clamping system or safety system to hold this in place. It may be this one here has got quick release devices and steel wire. So this is put into place, cut to size, and that'll prevent this, should anything fail here or come loose, then this would prevent that device from retracting out. So this is kept in place at all times when the device is installed, simply connected to the main stuffing box and the top of the device. There is other types. There's another one here which uses all threads, works in pretty much the same way. You would have the bottom plate there connected onto the stuffing box, the top plate connected to the top of the device, and then you thread these rods on at the appropriate length and lock them in place with the nuts to hold this all in place. Essentially does the same job. It's a quick release, a lot quicker for installation and removal. It can be sized depending on how far this is installed. It can be sized for that, and it doesn't leave any rods or anything sticking out the end. So there's advantages with going with the steel wire and the quick releases. So inside the Axess stuffing box, we'll just run through quickly what the components are. So this lock nut has a compression swage fitting. So there's two brass swage components. The first one will actually go down into here, and it will be tightened around the device and into the box when the second one, which has a step on it, is forced into the back side of it. So the lock nut provides that force. As that's tightened, this will compress down in there and just grip around here to lock this device in place. Inside the sealing portion, so we've got the larger sealing nut. In there we have a set of 5 PTFE seals. So there's 5 rings there. Each one has a V groove on the inside and a V peaked on the outside. So there's 2 bushings in there, top and bottom. As this seal nut is compressed down into the stuffing box, it tightens down on these seals, and those V's basically cause the seals to splay out both inwards and outwards, and they tighten into the monitoring device and the stuffing box. Okay, so a standard Axess retractable system. We're just going to go ahead, retract this device, seal everything off, make sure everything's okay, and then we'll go ahead and replace that device. So to start off, we just do a quick visual check Check that the valve's obviously open, so the device is installed through there. There's nothing leaking from any of these MPT joints. The bleed valve is shut. If it wasn't, then it would actually be bleeding from here, but this is all closed up. But we just give a quick check on everything, make sure it's all just tight. Just give it a quick. Okay, we'll check the sealing nut. So the sealing nut here has a series of 5 packing seals in here, lip seals. As this is tightened, that compresses those seals between 2 bushings, and it clamps down around the device and the stuffing box just to seal that pressure. So we'll just check that that is tightened up. That's tight. I just always like to check that everything's tight before I take the safety clamps off. The back end here is a compression fitting, which is locking this device in place. So we'll just make sure that that's tight as well, which it is. The next portion up here, the next part up here is actually just a stop. So what these are used for is once this device has been installed once, especially on things that are retrieved or retracted and then installed again, like coupon holders, injection nozzles, then we'll put this stop on so that the next time you actually insert it, you're not going to bash the device off the back end of the wall. This can be inserted to exactly the same position as it was before, so you only ever have to do that calculation once. If you don't have one of these, then what you can do is you can mark with a Sharpie how far this should be installed, and don't go past that point. Okay, now that we've checked that everything's tight and everything's secure, we can remove the safety clamps. So quick release, we'll slide this in, insert this in, and just retract that and remove the cable. Okay. This safety wire is sized for the device, so this is the last stop. So when you pull this out, this will go all the way and it'll actually stop. There is, however, a blowout preventer or a stop on the end of the device. It will stop this retracting all the way through the stuffing box. Okay, once that's done, we can now undo the compression nut. So use 2 wrenches on here, one to just keep that sealing nut from turning with it, and the second one to undo that. So that's that loosened off. The device is now being held in place by the seals. So we can now turn this very slightly until we start to get some movement on the device. That's it, starting to turn, and we can slide this out. If it starts to leak at all, just nip that up a little bit, but we're good to go. So let's retract this all the way. Okay, that's it, fully retracted, and I'm just going to nip that up a little bit to close up those seals again. Okay, the valve can now be closed. That's that closed off. We're now sealed off from the line pressure. However, there will still be a small volume of fluid in here, so you can just open the bleed port that we've got integrated into the nipple there, bleed off that pressure. This would be done into a bucket if this is oil or water or fluids. For gas, it can be dependent on what it is, needs to be bled off somewhere appropriate. Okay, now that this is out, we can start to undo this. Normally we want to actually take the nipple with it. Some of these devices won't go backwards through this nipple, so let's just take the whole nipple off. So we can use a pipe wrench just to disconnect this. Just disconnect it from the valve. Just always be wary and make sure that your valve doesn't start to unthread there as well. It's an MPT as well. Just keep an eye out for any other residual fluid that might be in there and drain that down into a suitable container. Okay, that's it, fully disconnected. If we loosen up the sealing nut again, can now slide this back down through the stuffing box, and you would change out your coupons. So in here we've got 2 coupons. Undo the nut from the bolt there, remove the coupons carefully. You don't want to contaminate these, you don't want to damage them, so always make sure that you don't hit them on anything or knock them on anything. Bag them, put your new coupons on. The new coupons will come with insulators, so replace the insulators as well, and put those on, recording obviously the location, the coupon number, serial numbers, the date installed, the date retrieved for the old ones, etc. Okay, to reinstall, we still have the valve that is sealing off the pressure there. Remove all the old thread tape from the end of the nipple, wrap some new thread tape, go clockwise from this end facing. That will actually save, it will end up with the tail of the thread tape facing round the way, so that it doesn't try and unthread itself off the end of the MPT as you're tightening it in. So keep this fully retracted. You don't want the device hitting off the ball valve, getting trapped in anything. Keep this fully retracted and thread back onto the valve. Once that's on, give it a good tighten up and secure it in place. Okay. Now this line is below 150 psi, so we can actually insert this by hand. Before we do that, let's just check a few things. I'm going to check that this bleed port is now closed. We don't want to open that valve and have it start bleeding out that bleed port, so let's check that's closed. This top nut doesn't have to be tight just now, so you can leave that loose. You can tighten it down just till it starts to tighten up, because we want to be able to slide this back and forth through the stuffing box. We'll tighten this larger nut, which is the seals, and then after that we're ready to open the valve. So open the valve slowly. You want that slowly to pressurize into the device, and just check while you're doing that. Keep an eye out for any leaks. If you see anything leaking out the top of the stuffing box, just give this a little tighten up. Make sure that's tight. If you see anything from the MPTs, close that valve again. We'll tighten all this stuff up. But we're good to go. So if that's fully open, we can now start inserting the device. So to do that, you want to loosen off the sealing nut just again until you can start to get some movement of this device. Turn it back and forth. Once you start seeing that turn, then it's pretty much, it's going to start sliding. So just keep that loose a little bit, push this device in till it stops, making sure that the device is orientated so the coupons are in line with flow. Once that's down to the stop point, tighten up that sealing nut. It should go hand tight then, but another half turn. That's tight enough. Now that's done, tighten down the top locking nut that has the compression fitting in it, and tighten that up to three-quarters of a turn. That'll keep that clamped in place. Okay. Back on with the quick release devices. So insert these down through both plates, back onto themselves, and then into the end of the device. And slide through. You'll hear it's got like a ratcheting. You just tighten that down, pull these tight, and you would cut the ends to length wrap with a little bit of electrical tape or something like that, just to stop the ends from fraying. Down through the other side. Just tighten that down, and then that'll hold that securely in place. So even if something were to loosen off here, or the locking mechanisms weren't working fully, then this would stop this retracting back the way. Final step is to get some safety wire and just run this through and safety wire the sealing nut to the stuffing box. So you've got that done. Just twist that a few times, tighten that down. That'll prevent that ever being able to back off until you cut the wire the next time. Just tidy up the ends on that. And that's complete.